The evening air in the desert was heavy with dust, and though the sun had already set, the heat still lingered as if reluctant to leave. He sat alone on a small crate outside his tent, staring at the ground, the weight of silence pressing on him harder than his body armor ever had. His name was Daniel, a soldier, a man of duty, but beneath the uniform and the discipline, he was simply a father, aching for the life he left behind. Back home, his son was just learning to make sounds. Giggles carried through the screen whenever Daniel managed to call. His wife would hold the phone near the baby, urging him to say, "Dada." And though the little one never quite did, Daniel treasured every gurgle, every tiny breath that reached him. But after the call ended, the emptiness of distance stretched between them like a canyon too wide to cross. War demanded more than strength. It demanded time, moments, and memories. Daniel often wondered if the price of his duty was too high, if protecting countless strangers was worth losing the only moments he could never reclaim. At night, when the camp was quiet, he replayed old videos. His wife sent the baby reaching for toys, babbling nonsense, and curling into sleep against her chest. He watched them with a smile that never reached his eyes. Among his fellow soldiers, Daniel was respected for his composure, his steadiness under fire. But in the solitude of his own mind, he battled a quieter enemy, the gnawing fear that his son would grow up without remembering his face, that he would be more a photograph than a father. It was a thought that clung to him, pressing harder with each passing week. As he sat under the foreign sky, he whispered a promise to himself, that no matter how far he was, no matter how many days slipped away, his son would one day understand. He would know his father's love stretched across oceans and deserts, even if it could not hold him at night. And so, Daniel carried both his rifle and his longing, both his mission and his memories, into another day. Each step forward in uniform felt like a step away from his family, yet he marched, believing there was meaning in the sacrifice. Still, the quiet ache in the call came when Daniel was on duty, patrolling under the relentless desert sun. His phone buzzed with a short message from his wife. He walked today. Daniel froze, his boots pressing into the sand, as if the earth itself held him still. He read the words again, hoping he had misunderstood, but they remained simple and final. His son had taken his first steps, and he had not been there. When the shift ended, Daniel retreated into his tent and pressed play on the video his wife had sent. There, on the small screen, he saw his little boy wobbling forward, tiny arms stretched out, his mother's hands just a few steps away. The laughter that followed was pure, a melody of joy. But for Daniel, the sound tore into him. His eyes blurred, and for the first time in months, he let himself cry, not for danger, not for pain, but for the distance that had stolen something so precious from him. He replayed the video over and over, clinging to every stumble, every smile, as though repetition could make up for absence. Yet the truth was immovable. His son had taken his first steps, and Daniel's arms had not been there to catch him. That night, he sat outside the tent again, the desert wind cooler now, carrying whispers of home he longed to touch. Around him, soldiers joked and shared stories to push away their own loneliness, but Daniel stayed quiet. Inside him, questions churned. Was he a good father if he was not present? Did serving his country mean he was failing his son? The weight of the uniform suddenly felt heavier than the gear strapped to his back. But as the stars spread across the vast night sky, another thought found him. Perhaps being a father was not only about presence in every moment. Perhaps it was also about sacrifice, about choosing the harder path, so that his son might grow up in safety. The thought did not erase the ache, but it offered him a fragment of peace. Daniel whispered a message into the silence, as though the wind might carry it across oceans. Son, when you are old enough to understand, know that every mile between us was filled with love. Even when I missed your steps, I was walking with you in spirit. And with that, he held his sorrow close, turning it into strength for the battles still ahead. Months passed before Daniel's boots finally touched American soil again. The air was different, familiar, softer somehow, as though it carried the scent of home. He stood at the edge of the airport terminal, scanning the crowd until he saw them. His wife, her eyes bright with tears, and beside her, a small boy, no longer just an infant. His son's steps were steady now, each one a rhythm that Daniel had missed but longed to join. The boy stared for a moment, uncertain, and then he ran, arms outstretched, stumbling with joy. This time, Daniel was there. He dropped to his knees and caught his pressing his face into his son's hair as tears slipped down his cheeks. The child giggled, wrapping tiny arms around his neck. And in that embrace, every lonely night, every missed milestone, every ache found its release. Later that evening, as they sat together at home, Daniel watched his son toddle across the living room, laughing as he fell and stood again. The memory of the video still lingered in his heart, but now it was softened by this moment, by being here. By hearing his son's laughter fill the space around him, he realized then that love was not diminished by distance. It was stretched, tested, and strengthened. His absence had been painful, but his return was proof that sacrifice did not erase love, it deepened it. In the quiet of the night, after his son had fallen asleep against his chest, Daniel reflected on the journey that had nearly broken him. He thought of the missteps, the doubt, the ache of absence, but he also thought of resilience, of the bond that no distance could sever. He whispered a vow to himself, one more lasting than any mission, to cherish every step, from now on, no matter how small, no matter how ordinary, because each one was a piece of a life he would no longer miss. Daniel knew he could not reclaim the moment he had lost, but he could honor it by never taking the moments ahead for granted. And in that promise, he found peace. Life often measures itself not in grand events, but in the quiet steps we take along the way. For Daniel, missing his son's first steps was a wound that would never fully fade, but it became a reminder that love can endure even the deepest distances. His story is a gentle call for us all to cherish the fleeting, fragile moments we so often overlook. For in the end, the truest measure of our lives is not where we walk, but who we walk beside. If this story touched you, please like, share, comment, and subscribe for more.